Welcome to our ERPAL for Service Providers screencast. In this screencast, I want to show you in detail how you can work with invoices and how you benefit in your daily work from a high automation of your revenue and how to customize your invoice layout and design according to your needs. In the previous screencast, named ERPAL Overview, I've shown how the system integrates all the business application integrated in ERPAL for Service Providers in this single platform so that you can easily share your data between applications and to automate your workflows and processes. Let's start to customize our invoice settings. We can access the customization form going to ERPAL Invoice Settings in the ERPAL Administration menu. In this form, you can change the invoice template path or the path of the invoice attachment template. In the invoice attachment, you will most likely see a list of time trackings that you added to an invoice or other revenue that you want to group to one invoice line item in order not to have all the line items listed on the single invoice page. So you will have a clear structure in your invoice with one line item and an invoice attachment that lists all the details. If you only want basic customization, you can go to your company settings and just change only the logo, for example. Let's pick an example. And you can change the document's footer. It's a form that accepts HTML output, and this can be a table, for example, as we have it in our example. And this table will be placed in the footer on the bottom of your invoice. So let's save this first and see how it looks like in our invoice. Before creating the first invoice, I want to give you a short overview how the invoicing functionality in ERPAL integrates into the system. The central point for your invoices is the billable list. In the billable list, all revenue created by certain activities will be added as one entity or one data set into this table. That means whenever you have a project that is paid per hour and you track a time on a task of this project, a billable will be created. If you complete a project with a fixed price or if you complete a task with a fixed price, again a billable will be created and this billable will be added to this list. The same for contracts and recurring payments. If you have a contract that can be billed again to your customer, then a billable will be created. So you can check the billables list once a month and create invoices from all billables that are available until this list is empty, and this ensures you that you never forget to create invoices for revenue that you may have forgotten. So first, create just a single invoice manually. We go to the Create Invoice form. Our company is already selected as contractor or supplier. We can create a new contract or just pick an existing customer. This is a contact from the CRM. After we selected the customer, we need to choose an invoice. As a customer may have different invoices, we need to select the one where we want to create the invoice for. The same for the shipping address if we want to add the shipping address to the bill. The invoice number has just a preview, and the form element is placed with a pattern or with a token, and this token will be created or replaced by the invoice number that will be generated from your invoice settings. I want to show you how to customize the invoice number because this is a pretty important question I'm asked quite often. Just go to invoice settings. Here you can change the offset and you can place a label or a prefix in front of your invoice number or even after your invoice number. You save this form, go back to the invoice, and if you access your invoice form again, you will see that the prefix was added to the invoice number and the offset was respected, as the next invoice number will be 6. So let's pick our customer again, select our addresses, and the invoice date is our current date. You are free just to change the invoice date with the form picker. This is the payment status. This status is set to not paid by default, as your invoices will not be paid yet at the time when you create it. And the credit period is the amount of days that will be added to the invoice date to calculate the payment date. Your currency is one of the currencies that you can change in your ERPAL invoice settings. And below you can either create an external order number, that is the order number of your customer. He may want to give this order number to you. And this is your internal order number. You can just fill it or leave it empty. You can use tokens for these values. That means if you create an activity, and as I've shown in the video how to work with the ERPAL CRM, you can add these numbers to your activities, to your sales activities. And whenever you create a project from a sales activity, or you create a contract from your sales activity, and these projects or contracts create revenue that will result as a billable in your billables view. If you create an invoice from these billables, this order number, internal and external one, will be automatically taken from the referenced CRM sales activity. So in most cases, if you work with the ERPAL workflow from a contact to a CRM sales activity up to a project till the invoice, then you don't need to fill this form field manually. Here you can add billables manually. These are the line items. Just change a service category. This is only necessary for the reports. If you want to get a detailed report, how much money you earn with your consulting or how much money you earn with your backend development, you can just filter your reports by these service categories. And how you can do this, you can view in the ERPAL for Service Provider screencast about monitoring and reporting. So just name the subject backend development. We leave the date as it is. Quantity is 1 and price is 1000. We leave the tax rate as it is, as we didn't enter any other tax rate in our ERPAL invoice settings. The expense category is the category that helps you to report your expenses by different categories. I didn't add any expense category yet. It can be done in the taxonomies. Just editing the list terms of your expense categories and edit one here. So you will be able to report your expenses by these categories. This only works if you create an expense invoice. That means your company is set as the customer and the contractor or supplier is another company. You can change the Sconto information if you are working with Sconto and give discount if your customer pays before the payment date. If you create an expense invoice, you can upload the invoice here, otherwise the invoice will be generated automatically, and you can leave some notes. This note was taken from the default settings of the ERPAL invoice configuration. You can again use these tokens that are available here, and after you have done these settings you can save. One important thing is that you can click this flag to save the settings as defaults for this customer. This means whenever you create an invoice for this customer, you don't need to change or manually set again the credit period. Let's say it's 7 days in our case, and you don't need to manually change the currency and the invoice address. So just remember these settings here, and as we click this flag, this information will be saved to the customer dataset. Here is our invoice. just contains all the information that you entered in the form as expected. And if you want to view the PDF, you can just click here, and as you see, it displays our logo that we uploaded. This is the information that we entered during the installation process, or that we can just change by editing this contact in our contact list. And below you have the HTML table that we added to the document footer settings. This is in general how the invoicing process works. Now you can add a payment to your invoice. And just pick a value, 1,000 euro. And the payer, if you leave it empty, it is the customer of the invoice. So leave it like this. Now you will see that we added one payment, but the invoice is not yet paid, as our saldo or balance is still 190 euro. That means the customer didn't pay the invoice completely. So let's add another payment. This payment, it's 190 euro. And now, as you can see, the invoice is set to paid, and we see the two payments of the customer. You can edit them and remove them, and this will change the status of the invoice again. If you are a Drupal developer and if you know how to work with the feeds module, it's very easy to create an import that will import your bank account information directly to ERPAL, so you can attach your payments from your bank account directly to your invoices and see which invoices are paid and which are not paid in real time. Let's proceed with the billables list and create some billables. We just name it Drupal support. Take a service category like consulting. Customers, our only customer in this case. Quantity is 10 hours for example. Single price 100. The date when this billable was delivered is set to today. This is okay, and we save it. We create another billable. It is again Drupal support extended, and just pick our customer. 5 hours, single price again 100, and save again. So if you have viewed the screencast about how to work with projects and how to automate the revenue, you will already know that you don't need to create your billables manually, because they are created from your projects and from your tasks. Just for this example, I want to show you how to create your invoice right from this form. So you click Create Invoice after selecting all your billables, and here you can add some settings. If you have lots of time trackings that create a billable, you may want to group them to one line item and to have all the single detailed time trackings as an attachment of your invoice. This is the setting by default. If you don't want to have this behavior, just set it to no grouping. Then you can change the invoice date. A very useful functionality is the global invoice date here. For example, if you create your invoices at the beginning of a new month, but for the booking date of the previous month, you don't want to set the invoice date again to the last day of the previous month, but you can do this once here, and whenever you create an invoice on the current day, this preset date will be pre-filled here in the form. All the other information are related to our customer that we selected here, and if you remember, a few minutes ago we created an invoice manually and we set the credit period for this customer to 7 days. So this will be set automatically to our form. Now let's save the invoice and confirm this operation. And the invoice was created, as you can see in our success message. You also see that we have only one line item, even if we had two billables. This is because we grouped our two billables together, and if you view your invoice PDF, you will see one line item in the invoice, and you have an attachment where you can see the detailed billables of this invoice. You can also see these grouped billables if you click at the ID and you want to view the billables here. This is the invoice that is not yet paid. This is why it is red. In the last part of this screencast, I want to show you how you can completely customize your invoice templates by changing the template file. Let's go back to our invoice settings, and as you remember, we need to change this path here. So let's go first to the current path. This is our current invoice template. We will copy this as a base for our customization, but place it on a different folder. So go to our ERPAL installation, Profile, ERPAL Modules, ERPAL and ERPAL Invoice. It is placed in the ERPAL Invoice Helpers template. Here we go with our two files. Let's pick them both and just place them in our custom folder, add sites, all themes. Maybe you have an own theme. In this case we don't have, so we just place them here. And we change our file. Now it is sites all theme. And if I submit this, of course there is a validation that tells you that the file does not exist because it is themes. So copy this and also add this path to our invoice attachment. Now save. And you see that ERPAL accepted this path, so we can now start to change them. Edit your invoice PDF template in just an editor of your choice, and as you can see, this is just normal HTML. We just want to change, for example, the header. You will see that the company settings are added by variables, and these variables are taken from the contact that you added as your own company in the ERPAL default or ERPAL basic settings. So let's change something. For example, we want the country to be a default country, and we don't want to take the variable of our contact. Let's name it default country and save. Now we go back to our invoice that we created in some steps before and just save the invoice again. If you save your invoice again, the PDF will be recreated too. So edit and save this invoice. Scroll down and view your invoice again. You will see the default country. You can just customize your template according to your needs. If you know basic HTML, you can change it as you want. This is how you can customize your invoice templates. The last important thing that you need to know about the invoice settings of contacts is that if you click to your customer, you can change or override the invoice settings that you can set by default in the ERPAL invoice settings here. So just click to our action menu and choose invoice defaults. As you can see, because as we created our first invoice for this customer and checked the flag on the very bottom that this information should be saved as the customer invoice defaults, you see the invoice address and the shipping address as well as the credit period and the currency. We didn't add sconto, percent and value, so this was not added to our invoice defaults or is just set to 0. If you want to have a personalized message on each invoice for this customer, hopefully to see you soon, You can save this, and when you view your customer dataset, and either you create an invoice to this customer in the billables list, or you create an invoice manually here, you will see that this message is set as a default note for the invoice to this customer. This makes it easy to personalize your invoices for your customers and to leave personal messages there, as well as grant personal credit periods. So thanks for your time and for watching this ERPAL for Service Provider screencast. Hopefully to see you in our next screencast.